Hello everybody, welcome to our live Future of Cashless chat today. Singapore is fast becoming a smart nation with technologies like assistive robotics and self-driving technologies. But in the area of cashless, 6 in 10 transactions in Singapore are still performed either by cash or check, and as PM Lee cited at a recent National Day rally. As compared to other countries like China, where the likes of Alipay and WeChat have really proliferated, and people are finding the use of things like QR codes really simple and convenient. So what would it take for Singapore to become a truly cashless nation? We are here today at Get Juice, Singapore's first cashless bar, I believe. And joining us today are 4 of our guests to talk about this topic. So why don't I leave it to our guests to introduce themselves, starting from Aaghir.
Hi, I'm Aaghir. I'm one of the owners of Get Juice. It's Singapore's first cashless bar, like you just said. And we've been doing this for about 3 months. And you come here and you don't use cash. You just use a mobile app to basically purchase drinks.
Hi, my name is Warren. I run Asia Pacific for a company called Adyen. We're a global payments company, processing payments for the likes of Spotify and Netflix, and here in Asia for the likes of Grab and Redmart.
Hi, I'm Anthony Seow. I'm from DBS. I'm the head of cards and unsecured for DBS here in Singapore. So I do a lot of stuff with regards to payments. So anyway, I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Guys, let's just get right into it. On the topic of cashless, why is it such a big deal? Why is the government talking about it? Why are so many platforms proliferating? Why is it such a big deal for you individually in your capacities?
For us, basically, when we wanted to go into it because we wanted to solve a primary problem, which was a labor shortage. So it made a lot of sense for us to go into a cashless environment. You wouldn't have to have cashiers. You wouldn't have to have waiters. The second problem we had was we realized that if you wanted people to come, and people were now being more demanding, they didn't want to wait. They wanted to know exactly when they would get their drinks. So it made logical sense for us to actually go into the cashless realm in terms of clubbing.
Cool. Warren?
Yeah, we work with some of the leading companies, not just online, but also at the point of sale that want to introduce the most seamless checkout experiences. And the common thread for both online and offline is really around digitizing the payments, and really we're going towards a cashless society.
Yeah, for us, with Singapore's ambition to become a smart nation, cashless is definitely a very important piece of it because by going cashless and digitizing payments, it allows us to actually lay a lot of different technologies on it to, for example, improve customer journeys, make life better for our citizens, essentially.
Well, it sounds like cashless is truly the way to go. So guys, why is it that it's so difficult to kind of get everybody to rally around this call? We see so many platforms out there. For example, for Get Juice, you have your own platform and database as compared to DBS with Payla and its own platform as well. So what is stopping, I guess, businesses and merchants to kind of rally around, getting cashless, making it more convenient and easy for consumers to adapt?
For us, I think the biggest issue is actually the cost. Every transaction you have to pay an amount. When I was in Sweden, you can go and a guy on a bicycle would sell you coffee and you would pay with your credit card. There's no way you can do that in Singapore because the fees are too high. And on top of that, when you want to get credit card terminals, you have to put in deposits. So I think the biggest issue that stops most places from going cashless is the initial investment and the fact that every transaction, you basically have to pay multiple different people.
Okay, makes sense.
From a consumer perspective, going cashless also takes a lot of time. Changing consumers' payments preferences, it's difficult. It doesn't happen overnight. And for a large segment of consumers, having cash where you can feel it, hold it, have it in your wallet, have it in the safe in your house, it feels really secure. But there's a true cost to cash, not just for merchants, but also to consumers by holding on to cash.
I think really the key is that certainly our payment tools may have certain costs associated with it and all that. But like at DBS, for example, also what we're trying to drive now is actually the hawker centers, but it's still very highly cash-based, right? There are a couple of things that were difficult to overcome. One was basically, of course, cost, is one of it. The other one was basically technology. So if you look at the in the space of retail today, where terminals and all that was brought up earlier, it doesn't work in an environment like hawker center. So that's why we are right now pushing very hard on sort of rolling out the paper-based QR code. But having said that, also for a business like his, payment tools like this can also be applicable. So basically they can offer a lot of options to consumers in terms of how they want to pay.
Just picking out a point about cash, being physical. We did a video a couple of weeks ago, and we sort of asked, people, would you prefer to get red packets with cash, or would you want to go the way of sort of like e-red packets? I mean, what are your thoughts? Is that something that you see Singaporeans adopting to when they go to a wedding and they start taking out their phones and start giving people e-ang baos, and I mean the couple, or is cash still very much part of the equation?
I think this is going to happen. You see red envelopes or digitize the red envelopes already in other parts of the world. Personally, I'd prefer it. I'm almost going cashless now in Singapore and get around on a day-to-day basis without using cash.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people prefer to go cashless. Firstly, it saves a lot of time, because if you look at it, for any consumer today, they have to go down to the bank, get new notes, go back, pack it in, then give it out. Then the people receiving the ang paos will have to take it out of the notes, count it, bring it to the bank, and get it deposited. That's a lot of work, right? I think really how e-ang pao can be successful is we have to keep in mind really what is the customer journey, right? Like for example, if you look at Chinese New Year, when a consumer visits relatives, what do? They walk in, they wish the Happy New Year and all that, and that's where you give the ang pao, right? So we have to kind of mimic that experience. But instead of cash inside, can we make it digital? For example, it could be a QR code in there where you store the value, and the recipient later takes out his phone and just scan, and he gets the value digitally. Without taking away the experience, the interaction that people are used to. So I think that's really important. If you want to drive cashless, we have to start thinking, what is the customer journey and the job to be done?
I think it's the value of the ang pao, to be transparent. If you gave me a cashless ang pao for $10, I'll be very pissed, because it is a bit of work just to realize the money. I cannot take it and buy a stack of coupons cashlessly. Just today I wanted to buy coupons booklet and I want to use my nets, and I couldn't use nets because the shopkeeper was like, it's a $10 booklet coupon. So I think there's a bit of work to it, right? And if it's a larger amount, it makes sense. But if you're talking about small amounts, you would rather realize it immediately, go out there, buy coupons, buy food, buy whatever on the spot.
That's a really interesting point, right? So, I mean, if you look at the example of China, where even your hawkers are very, very comfortable getting customers to scan their QR codes and all that. I mean, in Singapore, I've had chats with hawkers who are like, I don't want to leave a paper trail. First, it adds an additional layer of education for my customers. I want to fry my char kway teow and all that. But I want to handle cash because I don't have a paper trail. I don't have to worry about taxation, right? I can still continue to earn income that I don't have to declare, for example. What would you say to some of these very intrinsic factors that are preventing, cashless from sort of like going to the next level?
Yeah. In those cases, I don't know what to say. But I think another issue is there's also a bit of work. Like when we ran this club, previously in other clubs, the settlement would be very straightforward. You count your cash in the till, you do your Visa Master settlement, and that's how much you made, straightforward. In this case, right, we actually have to monitor transactions because potentially how it went, what was deducted. So there's a set of additional work. There's another layer I feel that also might affect people. So I think that's something we all have to get used to. It's going to be a bit more work.
I mean, your system is not just cashless, but it's contactless,
yes,
right? So you want to tell us a little bit about how it works and what's the response been to that?
Okay, so we decided that what we wanted to do is we wanted a system where they could purchase a drink before arriving here, buy it, and then they would get, they can pick how long they want before they collect their drink, and then they would get a number. When they arrive here, when the drink's ready, they'll be notified. So when they place an order, it is sent to the bank that clears it very quickly. Then it's sent to our kitchen runner systems. When we receive the order, it comes real time to their phones that your order has been received and it's being processed. When the order is ready for pickup, we send them a notification and the consumer can just walk up, take their drinks, walk away. We decided to opt for something like that because we wanted it to be seamless. We didn't want queues. And also, personally, my issue with QR codes, it's not easy to take pictures when you're drunk.
Well, that's very true.
So that's why we decided that we wanted to be as intuitive as possible. I want beer, big image of beer, okay. Confirm, okay. So that's the essence of it. We try to simplify it as simple as possible.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just answer your question, and I have some comments to make
Yeah.
on that. So basically, let's say there's a hawker who's worried about taxation and all that. Honestly, it's not something we can overcome easily. But I guess, there are a few ways eventually it will happen, I feel. I think, for a hawker like this, at least from DBS's perspective, is firstly, likelihood is probably a very successful hawker with long queues and all that. So we may approach it with a solution, for example, with DBS Fast Track today, which is very similar to what you have. It's a pay, order, collect, right? And it removes the need for their customers to queue, providing a better customer experience. And number two, also with this, right, with technology like this, like as an example in this place, you can actually improve the productivity of your in your store, right? So for example, right now, if it's guy frying the char kway teow, he may need one person or two persons or whatever to help to run the business, right? With technology, you might even be able to remove one headcount, or with the same headcount, you can do more business, which is what we have seen from how we've implemented the fast track solution with merchants like OT Hut as an example, right? They have seen their business actually sort of gone up and the volume they can handle using the same number of headcounts. So that's one part. But I think, the taxation part, let's be real, right? Eventually, what's going to happen with the push by government and all that, or even the food courts, they're going to go, you want to have a store here? You're going to have to accept cashless payments, right? So I think it will come eventually. So.
Okay.
So I'll give a global example. So at Adyen, we offer 250 payment methods from all over the world on our platform. And time and again, our customers are saying that whenever they introduce a local relevant payment method, that's something on incremental, they actually see an uplift in revenue. So what I tell the hawker center or hawker stall owners, hey, have you considered the fact that over time, if you don't offer credit card payments, for example, you may be losing a segment of consumers that say, you know what, I'm going to go to the hawker stall that actually offers a convenient checkout experience that's not cash. So, I'm a good example where I tend to go to FMBs that do offer credit cards just for a habit, I'm pressed for time. I find it more convenient. And if there's an order ahead functionality, I very much would choose the FMB with that experience.
So I just want to touch on the point about global experiences. So Warren, Adyen is a global company. Based on your experience looking at cashless payments, in other parts of the world, and looking at Singapore as a case study, I mean, why do you think it's so difficult, right, for Singapore to be able to adopt or to adapt to cashless in probably in a way that you would expect of a very highly developed, highly connected society like Singapore?
Yeah, I think the irony is that where we see the biggest push and the progress on going cashless is really around emerging markets where payments is actually is a high friction. Going to an ATM to get cash is high friction. It's a big pain point for consumers. Here in Singapore, things do work. There are ATMs. Cash is very easy to go procure, or it's easy to go to a bank to go deposit the cash. So it's relative, the pain points are relative. And I think that's why it takes a little bit longer in established markets where the friction points aren't as high.
I mean, Aaghir, do you agree? I mean, in terms of your entire bar is premised on the fact that it's cashless. I mean, what Warren is saying is that it's so simple for people today to still use cash in Singapore to pay for their drinks or pay for their food. But what does it mean for you?
So I actually want to go back to the earlier points about the hawker. I mean, sorry to bring it back up, but
Sure.
One of the issues is what about chargebacks? We constantly get that now. So someone comes here, spends a great night, forgets what they ordered, and then the next day calls and does the chargeback. And then rather than the money coming to us in 2 days, we have now to process it, pull up the camera footage, so this guy physically making that order, send it to these guys, and then 7 days later get their money. So I can imagine this will be worse for a cashier, a hawker, who needs that money immediately. So I think that might be another stumbling block, because one of the things we are getting used to is chargebacks. We did F1, we had a big F1 party, and the average spend went up tremendously. So the people were doing $1,000, and all of a sudden we got flagged, and we got called up, and then they wanted to know what was what, produce the receipts. And it was very time consuming. So I I think it would be very hard, I disagree slightly with you, for a single person to do something like that. I have 2 accountants just to deal, putting up receipts and dealing with all these things. So I think a poor hawker would struggle in that case.
Yeah, maybe if I can sort of answer that, but I tend to disagree also, because if you look at it, right, in terms of the way the payment system works, in your case, the example you gave on chargebacks is relating to Visa, MasterCard type of payments. The way it works is actually a bit different without wanting to get too technical. But if you look at the QR code payment today, it actually mimics a cash payment, right? If you like, what do we mean by that, right? Basically, it is a push payment, meaning I'm the one right now giving it to you, right? Whereas a Visa, MasterCard is a pull payment because I give you a card and then you pull from my account, right? So it's slightly different. So you won't have that chargeback, because if the person don't give you the cash like that, which is how you actually do a push payment for a QR code, you will not have received the payment. Therefore, chargeback scenarios will not apply.
So I think this is a really interesting point, right? And I think the discussions around going cashless has largely been a technology issue. Well, let's go have a cashless wallet. Let's just remove cash from the system. But it actually takes an entire ecosystem to make the changes. It's really not just about the form factor of replacing paper with plastic or plastic with the mobile phone. It's about making sure that the consumer feels secure, and also from the merchant to make sure that the risky transactions don't happen, and that they have a guarantee that once they have the money, that they don't have any, that it is their money. Yeah. So it's not just about the form factor. The discussion has been around the technology piece, but there's a big discussion around the policy piece that hasn't really happened yet.
I mean, we walk around with our mobile phones all day, and in a world of cashless, obviously, this thing will be sort of like the one thing to rule every all our transactions, right? What if we lose the phone? I mean, to your point, Warren, about data and privacy and ensuring that consumers are able to then, pick themselves up after they've lost the phone and get on their day. What do you think Singapore needs to do to address, issues and concerns around data privacy and, I guess, spillage of data and information?
I mean, that's at the highest concern for anyone involved in payments. Both, as a consumer, I worry very much about, privacy, security, and that's really, I think, where the industry has to make sure that this is a top-of-mind issue. But having said that, today, if you lose your wallet, you have the same issue. Your credit cards are in there, your cash is in there. And today, I think the average consumer, or very typical consumer behavior, is if you leave the house and you leave your wallet and you leave your phone at home and you go to the bus stop, what would you do would you go back and get your phone, or would you go back and get your wallet? I think people would say, you know what, I left my phone, I need to go back. But if I leave my wallet, people might say, I could survive a day without it.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. I think people will be more sensitive to losing their phone than their wallets, to be very honest. Especially for women, right? Especially for women, right? Because the purse will be in the handbag, and they'll, the thing right now, I saw some numbers interestingly. I can't quite recall off the top of my head, but I saw some data points about how often people actually go into their phones on a single day, right?
Oh, right.
And how many times you touch your wallet in a day, right? So, but coming back in terms of safety, you ask me, on the phone it's a lot safer, because if you look at it today, right now, there's Touch ID. In the new iPhone, you have the facial recognition. And, there are a lot of other authentication technologies coming online. Like, for example, I saw another one the other day is how do you type, into the keypad and all that will determine whether you are the person or not. So all these, if you layer on, actually makes it more secure, right? So you, like for example, if Apple Pay and all that, if you lose your phone, nobody can use it because they can't unlock your phone, right? Whereas your wallet, it's right there, and the cash is gone and all that. So actually going cashless, if anything, it's a lot safer for the layman, if you like, right? So I think that's a myth that I think we need to overcome in terms of pushing cashless, which the security piece, which is very, very important.
Great. Let's assume security is something we can work towards. Let's talk a little bit about the cultural or some of the intrinsic factors. Parents, for example, say that, hey, I want to be able to teach my kids the value of money, right? Without a physical $1 coin or a $2 bill, it's very hard for me to teach a 4 or 5-year-old how do you count money and understand the importance of being able to do simple budgeting and things like that. So, I mean, how do we, in a cashless world, how do we teach our kids, right? What is money, and how do we get into that conversation with them? Any ideas around perhaps your own examples?
Kids are really smart. So I have 2 young children, and that's a very frequent question that parents go through, right? And how do you teach kids the value of money? Well, is it the fact that do you teach by having the paper money? So a good example I use is, look, I give my kids 10 minutes of TV time. So it's a unit of time. It's not a unit of paper. But the first thing they do is they memorize it, or they actually write down on a ledger how much units of time they have to go watch TV if they complete a certain chore. So I don't necessarily think it's about having the physical piece of paper to count the money, but they can, they know that they have $10 worth of value somewhere. They'll write it down. They'll know that. Kids learn really fast.
You should like write a book for parents teaching kids how to count in the digital world, right? So, Anthony, any views from you?
Actually, my advice to parents who think that way is that I think, what's real is this, right? Cashless is coming, right? And if you really want to prepare your child for the future in terms of understanding the value of money, how you manage it and all that, we really need to start them young on the digital platforms, getting them used to it, than counting money like this. And that's value of money. I think then you're teaching something that's going to go away. I think what's more important right now is they need to get on a platform, future-proof their children, so when cashless comes, they are ready for it.
That's cool. And this is in a world where kids are getting smartphones
Exactly.
younger and younger.
Yeah,
so
exactly. So I'm sure they will catch on very, very quickly.
Maybe one day they will see, what is this $5 note? I mean, do we even recognize it? But I want to come back to a point about technology, right? So, and really it's a question for you, Aaghir, right? What happens, your entire bar runs on a cashless, highly integrated system, right? What if the lights go out and the system goes down? How do you make your money when, in a typical bar scenario, I've got cash, I can pay, and I have that human interface, but what if there's a tech failure? How will you cope?
So to begin with, we have redundancies. We actually have batteries so that the POS don't ever go offline, for starters. So if there's a surge, we can't afford, especially midway through transaction, there'll be a big problem for us. So we have that to ensure that happens. But to be honest, large ticket items, already many people were never paying cash for. The vast majority of bottles that exceed 200 already no one paid cash for. I remember actually going to a club in Singapore. They just opened and didn't get their credit card terminals in time. I don't know why they decided to open. So I went there and you assume, and I was like, hey, congrats, give me 2 bottles. And then the bill came and I was like, and they're like, we don't accept cards here.
Oh,
and I looked around and I realized that no one could purchase a bottle because most people don't carry more than 100, 150 in their wallets anyway. So we have redundancies to answer your question. But if that actually happened, no club would be able to survive. Not even a digital club.
I mean, for the tech guys, right? I mean, do you feel that we are coming to a point where it's becoming very, very easy for the adoption of technologies and the backups and all that are in place? I mean, just to people who are watching this, how do we send that assurance that it's all being taken care of and there's really no need to worry about any kind of spillage or loss of your digital currencies and things like that?
I think it's happening already. If you go and say, how often do you run into an environment where the credit card terminals are not running because of a power outage? It's becoming increasingly rare. So I think that's probably the most real life example I can say. Look, compared to say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the availability of credit card terminals and the reliability of these transactions are a lot higher.
Yeah, so I mean, I can share some numbers, right? Like for example, the likes of Visa and MasterCard, their uptime is like, you're talking about 99.49s, availability. So it's almost 100%. But I think really the key is this: with everything that we do, regards to payments or anything with banks, we have redundancies and all that. So these are things that will help to sort of prevent things like this from happening, right? But there's certain things that we can't control. As an example, let's say if an outlet, a restaurant goes blackout, I mean, nobody can solve that, right? But the reality with the restaurant is in blacked out, nobody can eat anyway. So, but I would say I think technology so far has really sort of gone to the point where, the uptime is there, and there are a lot of regulations around also, by MAS and all that, what the banks need to put in place as backup, redundancies. And as an industry itself also, we run through what we call BCPs, where we simulate problems, terrorist attacks, what do we do, stuff like that, to bring it back up quickly. So, as an industry, these are going on all the time to make sure that we are there without interruption.
I mean, one would argue, for example, in this new world of cashless, the modern day thief would be the hacker, for example, right? So, I mean, we've seen so many instances in the past, just in the past year alone, of massive hacking incidents, both locally as well as internationally. How do we assure consumers that the data and the money that you have in your e-wallets is never going to be vulnerable to hackers, or how do we prevent those incidents from happening?
Well, if you look at it, okay, there are a few ways to prevent it from happening, right? If you ask me, I think technology is not really the issue. Technology is not really the issue. So let's say right now you talk about fraud from cards, right? E-commerce merchants and all that. The technology is not the issue. The problem is that processes are not followed, and that's where it becomes weakened, right? So as an example, in terms of process where you do not allow a computer, or you limit the access to who you can allow to access a computer because it's sensitive. You block off things like thumb drives, things like this. So a lot of like for example, Target a few years ago, right? They had quite a massive data breach through a hacker. People had been hacked into the system. What caused it wasn't the technology, it wasn't the hardware, it was basically the lapse in process where, if I believe correctly, thumb drive was not to be used, and that's how a malware was introduced. So technology is okay. It's really the humans that are actually the weak link in all this.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's two sides to the equation, right? So one side where everyone in the industry, including us, in payments, offer risk engine, right? And that risk engine is, let's prevent something bad from happening. And then from the second piece is really not the technology issue, but again, a policy issue of what happens if something happens, is the consumer fully protected? So if you can assure that, do whatever you can as an industry to make sure that things don't happen, use technology to solve that, or technology and processes. Also, if something does happen, how is the consumer ultimately protected? And that's the assurance, right? The comfort that, okay, something has happened, but as a consumer, you're not fully liable. Right? So there's two sides of the equation here.
I mean, paint us a scenario with all that's happening and technology is getting better. Hopefully, consumers will start taking to the technology more. We've got more merchants like yourself who are setting up, payment methods and establishments which make it really easy and actually adds value to why we should go cashless. How do you think Singaporeans' lives will change in the future? I mean, if all this comes into place, just paint us a picture and tell us.
In my case, I think it's going to be better in sense that we can actually deliver what actually is wanted. We don't have to stock up on thousands of different kinds of bottles. It actually gives us the ability to predict what people want, when they want it, and ensure the stocks are here, even prior to them arriving. So I think you're going to get less cases of, oh, we're sold out. We don't have this now. It's always going to be there.
That sounds really good as a consumer.
And I agree. I think the debate on cashless to cash to cashless, the really core piece is with cashless, consumers can experience much better, shopping experiences, retail experiences, shopping, whatever it could be. I think you just have so much more enrichment because of all the data that can be captured through digitization.
Yeah, for me, actually, I'm very excited with this because in my mind, when you digitize payments, when you go cashless, it opens up a whole lot of new opportunities, right? How we can deliver better customer experience, better customer journeys, and of course the data, to your point, where we can provide even better customer service, right? So I think, to me, and what will happen also, you result in time savings for consumers, for example, right? I mean, really, my dream I'm still trying to crack today is, can I walk into the supermarket, pick what I want, and just walk out, Because if you ask me, even I pay cashless-wise, right? And I still have to queue through the cashier part. How do we digitize the whole process, right? I think that's really where I'm excited about.
We're going to end on a last question, I think from a user on Facebook, I believe. Chris on Facebook was asking, and maybe I'll shorten the question a little bit, right? For each of you, one sentence. How do you think you will individually, in your capacity, either in your business or in the work that you do, make it a lot more intuitive and convenient for Singaporeans to embrace cashless? Yeah. What is the one thing that you would do today or in the near future to help Singaporeans get even closer to being?
Offer discounts lah. It's pretty straightforward, right? I mean, for me, like, make it cheaper lah. then people will definitely be more interested to go cashless versus cash.
It's very typical Singaporean. I love that answer.
For us, as a payments company, our goal is to make sure that we can help our merchants offer the best checkout experiences, seamless, frictionless, convenient, new customer journeys, to open up new opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
For me, again, at DBS, we're very focused on the customer journey. So, as an example, I think to push cashless, the first thing that need to happen is to make that payment experience as simple as possible. So, like for example, PayLah, we go through a very in-depth process where we have a human-centered design lab where we test it out, we prototype, we get feedback, we iterate very quickly. So the whole idea is you need to make it as intuitive as possible. That's one. Then the other part also, I guess, as DBS, what we hope to do, we have this aim of embedding ourselves in the customer journey. So ideally, if you ask me, the perfect scenario we want where you do what you want, payment becomes totally invisible. If I can accomplish that, then you will be truly cashless.
How far do you think we are away from that?
I think we are well on the way in that journey, right? Like again, coming back to a couple of things that we've done, like for example, Fast Track is the one I talked about, right? Order, pay, collect, and all that. Where right now we totally changed the journey. Imagine you're on your way to work, your favorite coffee, you order, you're there, you just pick up and you go. You don't even think about payment anymore. That's really where I think it'd be ideal. Now, if you layer on top of that, you talk about beacons, you talk about other technology where I can sort of recognize you walking in. You don't have to order, that kind of stuff. We can do things like this. I think that would be fantastic.
Great. On that note, I think we've come to the end of the live chat. So thank you, to our guests today for really a very invigorating session. Lots of food for thought and drinks. Definitely going to be on the house, I hope, right after this. And thank you so much for watching. And until the next time, this is Temasek and the Future of series. Thank you. See ya. Bye.